Okay, so we've had quite a tour through getting into Magento, getting into the system, and then finding our way around. One of the great things that Magento gives you the ability to do is through configuration, you can change the functionality of the core. That's what we talk about when we say class overrides. And you can use overrides, rewrites, lots of different terms are used, but basically mean the same thing in this context. So remember earlier when I told you not to ever change core files or to do the trick where you have your core file and you take that core file and just recreate the same path under app code local? Well, the reason you don't have to do that is because of Magento's ability to, the ability it gives you to override other modules' files. So, yeah, and the ones we can override, the ones that we'll learn about right now are overriding models, helpers, and blocks. It's all identical. Again, it's all configuration based, so we will look at some of the configuration, and then we'll be doing this again. So you'll continue to get some more experience with this. But this is also used quite often in Magento. Even extension developers will need to add functionality usually to some existing class, and they can do that this way. There's also the event observer system, and you can also change functionality that way. But two different approaches. The observers actually tend to be a little less intrusive and less prone to collisions between, say, two modules needing to override the same class. You have to actually kind of chain that together. But yeah, we'll look at that. So what can you override? Via this system, you can override models, resource models, so that's entity models and then collections and resource models themselves, blocks, and helpers. So we've been talking about configuration. We've looked at we've looked at how to set up our own module. And here, we're going to look at how we can, in our own module's configuration file, change something else in the system. In this case, we're going to change sales quote address. So I'd like to take a moment and point something out. So if you see over here, sales quote address. So we have global model sales rewrite quote underscore address. If you are paying attention, you'll see that sales node should mean something to you. So basically, where that node is originally defined is in Mage sales configuration file. So if you look in app.code core Mage sales etc config XML, and you go grep through that file, you'll see this path. You'll see config global models, right? And then inside there, you'll see sales. And inside sales, you'll see class. So if I could write on the screen, I'd love to, but I can't. So imagine, though, that you have this path existing, because remember, all the configuration is loaded together. It's basically loaded into one big DOM structure. So what we have is this XPath has already been set up somewhere else, and we're simply adding a node to it. So if we looked at the full configuration, if we looked at the output of the full configuration object, you would have, once we do this, you would have sales, and then inside sales you'd have class, Mage sales model would be the value inside the class node, and that's your class prefix. And again, that's how sales is translated to Mage sales model. And then what we're doing in our configuration file is we're adding a rewrite node. So this is very cool, because in the Mage core model config object, again, that's the object that Magento uses to look at the configuration for the most part. For the most part, pretty much in most places, Magento is using that particular object to inspect the configuration. Now, and that was through that get config that we were working with earlier. So, again, and I know I'm spending a lot of time on this one point here, but it's very important because this is why we use factory methods, and this is how this works. We're going to take our node, this rewrite node, and pass in quote address, and then pass in a full class name. So what that config object does, we might see this call. Let's see. Mage, get model, sales, and then what are we getting? We're getting quote address. So, quote underscore address. I hope you may not totally understand it right now, but I hope you're starting to see some patterns. You see sales and then sales. So whatever's before the slash, again, that's going to be a node directly under whatever type we're dealing with. In this case, models. So mage get model, sales. The configuration is going to look at that and arrive at that spot in the configuration hierarchy, global model sales. And then before it would go through, and normally it would say, all right, well, we're going to find that class prefix. We're going to take that class prefix, and we're going to add quote address to it, which would give us this class of, let's see, mage, sales, model. Again, this is the class prefix. This node in the configuration is global models. Sales. So we just use Mage Core Model Config to look here, and then look for the class node. And in the class node is where we get Mage Sales Model. So normally, what this does, sales, Mage Sales Model, and then quote address. I think I'm starting to hear some light bulbs clicking out there. Again, this is incredibly important in Magento just because this is done everywhere. But this is the real point behind the factory method. Because using the factory method, if we were declaring this in our code everywhere, we'd be stuck. You'd have to go through and just use grep and set and change everything en masse. But we don't want to do that. We use the factory method because what happens before Magento looks in the class node is it looks to see under sales if there's a rewrite node. So these two sibling nodes, and looks at the value there. Now, under rewrite, the configuration class looks to see if there is a match here, quote underscore address. So basically, we've got a class node and a rewrite node right next to each other. And then we have, in our case, we're adding, quote, address. So, under quote address, we're adding a full class name. So what happens is, in that configuration object, we get from here to here. Before we try and do this, we do this. We look under rewrite and see, basically, is whatever we passed here, is that itself a node under rewrite? And in our case, it is. So what Magento will then do is not bother with any of this other stuff and will just simply use that class name. So it's possible to declare, basically to say any class name at all. I could say fooBarbaz, right? And that would be the class that would be instantiated instead of Mage Sales Model Quote Address. It would be a silly thing to do because, again, if I see under my namespace, training, if I see a folder named sales, I'm probably going to realize, oh, I'm probably changing something. So training, sales, model, quote, address. That's going to be the path. So in your mind, just replace all of those underscores because the system will just try and instantiate that class directly. Run the new keyword on training, sales, model, quote, address. There's no definition in memory. Autoloader kicks in, so we get training / sales / model / quote address.php. Very simple, but it takes a little while to get used to. So keep thinking about it. When you see this syntax anywhere, you should start realizing that this is simply an alias for some class name. But as far as rewrites go, we have just this one extra step. And that's it. Sort of. We'll get into resource models later, but that's it for now. Any questions? Good. You should have questions. You don't know this yet. You should have questions, but just stick with me for now, and we'll continue to get through it. Trust me, you're going to be in much better shape learning this right now. This whole process, it took me... Well, parts of it, I don't think I ever looked under the hood until I started teaching this class. I mean, not really following it all the way through. You knew about the rewrite node, you know about these things, and you become more familiar with the system. But it doesn't hurt. Remember, I've referenced that class several times, Mage Core Model Config. Feel free to look in there. You have to jump through about 4 or 5 different function calls. And again, you're starting with the Mage class, just the static method. But this jumps directly over to the configuration object. And it really, you do yourself a disservice if you don't go in and look under the hood. It's open source, Figure out what it's doing. It's really not that hard. So, all right. Let us continue on then. Let's see. Okay, so we've talked about, we just looked at what happens when you're rewriting a model. Now we need to talk about resource models. And those are a little bit trickier because there's an extra step that we go through to find out, basically, we have to reference one node to actually find out the node to use for rewrites with resource models. So basically, the need here, of course, is that we have, in the case of a CMS page, because the resource models are what we use to deal with the storage of entities. And I would say here we need to, let's see. I think you could do something. Say you have an extra additional table of information that you always want loaded with your page object. You could customize the resource model to do that. So basically, whenever you get your entity from the database, you create your CMS page object called load, give it an ID. Well, that has to talk through the entity model to the resource model. The resource model will grab that out of storage. So if you customize that to do something, it's really pretty easy. This is what you would need to do in order to do that. Now, the problem for me when I first tried to do this was I had no idea what to use for this node under models. All right? Because you might think, well, it's a model, rewriting a model, we'll just use CMS. But we're not going to use CMS. Because what the configuration does to find resource models, so effectively we have a call to Mage get resource model. What that looks like is this. It's a very similar thing, though, to what we just saw with get model. So get resource model, just simply going to look in a different spot in the configuration. So this is what happens. We would see CMS page. And if we wanted to actually get the page entity model, it would be just get model CMS page. That's kind of why this convention, it's a neat convention. It works. So the resource model, the model, both use CMS page. This is a string for both of them. Now the difference is, whereas CMS page in get model would look under in the configuration DOM structure, we're going to look for this XPath, global, and this is Mage Core Model Config, again, doing the work. Global models CMS resource model. Now, this node, so these are all XML nodes. In here, we have a value, and it's a string of CMS MySQL 4. So this is an important thing. This was a very confusing thing. I'm sorry I'm explaining about 15 things to you at once, and some of you haven't even had to deal with this yet, so you don't even know the problems that I'm addressing, but it's important things. So go ahead and write down in your notes that this underscore here doesn't mean anything. This MySQL 4 doesn't mean anything. In fact, this is just a string. As long as it's valid to put in some XML structure, it's OK. Because what happens with get resource model is instead of looking here, well, first we look here, global, because we have to take CMS. The config object takes CMS, matches it up to here. But then because we're looking for a resource model, we look in the resource model node, get this string value, and then internally pass that back into another function that we use for models to get the model group class name. And we'll end up looking under global models CMS MySQL 4. So this is itself a node under global models. And then in there, it's the same thing that we've seen already with a class name. And in our case, what's important is the rewrite node. So the exact same thing happens. Because we match page against rewrite page. If this is found when we go here, we just use whatever class we specify. In this case, training CMS model MySQL 4 CMS page. Again, it could be whatever we want, the name, and therefore the path. But it's just always wise to follow to have a similar path to what you'd see in the core. That just to me, it's a good heads up to yourself, 8 months down the road, and to other developers as well. I've seen some very ugly, ugly rewriting conventions, and it's just a hassle to go and find things later. So, any questions? You guys are doing really well. You're very quiet, though. Okay, so, right. So, it's important to me also. So, I know we're hitting you with a lot, like, wow, but take a second and step back. What are we doing? Well, we have this huge configuration that some of you are just getting used to or finally, hopefully, starting to understand. And what's going on here is we need to change some functionality. We need to change the way, in this case, we need to change the way we're getting information, the kinds of information we're getting in this case, for CMS pages. Well, that's how we do this. The first step that you're going to do when you need to do this is make this configuration node. That's what rewriting does, though. It gives us this ability to say, don't use the core class, or some other modules class, use this class instead. Very good. Now with blocks, I'm not going to go through the same explanation on the board because blocks, it's the exact same thing. So basically under checkout in this case, so checkout success, so the one-page success, so checkout module, so you can imagine you would see create block, checkout, / one-page success. You may not understand in Mage core model config, like it takes a little while to trace through that and then jump over into Variant to get the class name from the configuration object, but just remember, if you need to rewrite something, find out how it was declared. Resource models are the only ones that are tricky because instead of using CMS under global models, you actually have to look for the resource model node, which hopefully now you should know to do. In fact, you could also say Mage get model, and pass in a path, but we won't deal with that. Let's see. Sorry, I should explain that. Not passing a path, but you could say Mage get model CMS MySQL 4 / page, and you'd get the same effect. That's just an aside. But if you're getting a resource model, always do it this way. So, all right, training checkout block success. So in this case, checkout module. So you would see create block checkout / one-page _ success. So you can remember that and know that that is going to be your approach for everything except resource models. And that's just the extra step. So the result of this, calling create block, assuming our configuration had been refreshed and this module was active, would be to instantiate this class, training checkout block success. And this is a good example because it shows that we don't actually have to mirror this structure. So, very good. And again, more of the same with helpers. Now, helpers, though, that's one more trick. A lot of times you'll see Mage helper, or you'll see this helper. You'll basically see the request, the factory method for a helper, and then you'll only see just a string with no slash. And just for your edification, when you don't have a slash, for helpers only, the class name that is assumed is data. So we might, somewhere in the code, we would see Mage helper checkout. And what happens for helpers only, and you can see this in Mage core model config, you'll see if there's no class name passed in, the assumption is data. So the class that we're overriding here would be Mage checkout helper data.php. Okay? So if you need to overwrite that kind of, and you could call the same thing. So this could be called with Mage helper checkout / data. But Mage checkout / data and checkout are the exact same thing for helpers alone. All right. Now, I'm going to lead you through rewriting different types of classes. And yes, we'll be doing this again in the CMS index controller. Okay, so lesson 7, a great lesson. You learn a lot about, showing you all about how to, how to change functionality in Magento, and that's a very awesome thing that we can do. So let's actually get our hands on this. Let's do this. So rather than have me divide you guys up, we're going to walk through this together because I find that it's really beneficial to just go through and have a little discussion because it lets me reinforce how the configuration is being used once again. So first thing we need to override is the product model. Well, first of all, we're going to stop playing around with the index controller. I know it says here in the index controller, but I just want to show you something very, very fast. If you look here, This is a nice little Magento testing script. All I'm doing is including appmage.php, which is exactly what the index file does as well. But instead of calling mage run, I'm calling mage app. That basically is just going to instantiate the application and do some basic setup. It's not a full load. It's not a full instantiation. I believe that setup scripts wouldn't run, etc. So for our purposes here, and if you ever need to play around with models and look at their internals, this is a fantastic thing to do. So this is in my web root, which is my Magento root, in test.php. You just simply make the file, include the mage definition, the bootstrap file, and call mage app. If you're doing anything, you can also call umask. That's for I believe that's for some user, basically the user that is the system. Interacting with the file system. But for what we're doing, not important. So yeah, mage app. Now, what do we need to do? Catalog product model. Okay, well that's easy enough. So first of all, let us instantiate that directly. So I'm just going to use a generic variable here, object equals, and then we'll use our mage get model catalog product. Okay? And then I will echo get class and just simply reference this object. All right. So very simple setup, and and let's see. There's my browser. So just visit that script directly. If you look, the htaccess file by default, it's going to pass through any files that exist. Will actually just be routed to directly. So a lot of requests are routed through the index file, but not this one, because it exists in the file system. That's that. I believe there's a .f or -f flag in the rewrite conditions in the htaccess file. So does everyone have this working on their screen? Uncanny. You guys are really good. Wow. All right. Very good. So. I use this all the time, by the way. This is just a great way, again, if you need to just instantiate something, look at the internals. It's just a very quick and easy thing to do. So, well, we want to change this, though. So the purpose of what we're doing is, say we need to change the way in which this behaves. So you don't really get much behavior this way. I mean, we could look at this class, mage catalog model product. That certainly is going to be doing a lot of things. Yeah, lots of stuff here. See if there's anything interesting. Huh. All right, get name. We'll look at get name. So this is actually a bit unnecessary because of variant object. Which we'll be discussing in more detail. The magic getters and setters, for those of you who've done some studying on Magento, as far as I know, are disappearing in Magento 2, but we'll see. Yeah, so get name. Let's see. Well, in order to get name, because right now, if I, right now, if I were to call object get name, or actually I will var dump it, it's going to not exist. So I should see, no. Okay, because I haven't loaded a product yet. So let's chain this together. Let's load some product ID. I don't know the IDs offhand, but we'll say 166, maybe? Oops. Perfect. HTC Touch Diamond. Okay, so say I need to, marketing has called down and they want everything uppercased all the time. Every catalog product name should be uppercased. And you put your heads down and you keep going. Say, okay. Well, how can we do that? Well, there's actually a couple of different ways. We'll look at this. We'll look at another way to do this with event observers, and that is probably the better choice. There are actually I think there are a lot of extensions that will, and certainly a lot of localized customizations that will try and, that will do what we're about to do and rewrite this class. And you can avoid those kinds of collisions if you just do this similar thing via an observer. But for a practical example, this will do. Well, not terribly practical in a business sense, but so how do we do it? Well, we go back to our configuration for our module. And again, our module, if you recall, Magento knows about our module by, we'll go on this tour again, by going, looking in app-etsy, the app-etsy module is basically looking for these .xml files via PHP glob function. And so we have Etsy modules, we have our module config, oops, not find feed, first module. And then we have, we go from here to app code local. So that's our code pool. First module, so first/module. And then in the Etsy folder, we'll look for config XML. So we get from here over to here. And here we go. I can go ahead and clear out this stuff. I don't need it. Now, what is the goal of what we're trying to do? Well, if you recall, over in core mage catalog model, not model, Etsy config, under global models catalog is where we define our class prefix. So I'm going to copy this piece of information over here and comment it. So this is the actual node. We're just going to be adding to this. So if you remember, our configuration is just added to the DOM structure along with everything else. So what we're going to do in our file is declare global models catalog. So this piece of information, as far as the end DOM structure is concerned, we have config global models catalog, and under catalog we'll have class mage catalog model. And then we also are defining a rewrite node. So this is our addition to what the DOM structure that was already basically created by the core, the Magento catalog module. Now, if you could recall, with rewrite syntax, you specify the full class name. So in our case, first module model product. Again, it could be any name that we want as long as the autoloader can find it, but we're going to be good, friendly Magento developers and follow convention. So namespace, module name, model, product. Now, the interesting thing is when we're doing a rewrite, we don't have to declare any kind of any class prefix for our own models, because these rewrites don't work through don't work through that kind of configuration lookup. It just simply will when the factory method that we looked through earlier goes and finds this class group node, catalog, we'll check to see if a rewrite node is defined. And if so, look to see, oh, I'm sorry, no one corrected me. We need to do this. That wouldn't work. We need to specify what it is we're rewriting, of course. So, and again, now you see that's actually a perfect example of why I like to, I teach this all the time, and sometimes I still make mistakes like that. If you think about this stuff, the way the system is using it, it becomes much more, much easier for you to remember it and probably catch little errors like that. I mean, some little error like that can cost you, you know, in an hour or two. It's amazing. Simple typos, as some of you have already found out, can cause some big problems. So I would like to just point out that, again, that it's very important for you to think about and work with these in the way that Magento does. So again, you can think to yourself, OK, how is this working? Well, the MageGet model is going to end up looking in a configuration for this, whatever that first part is before the string, catalog in our case. So we have, let's see. So we have catalog. That gets matched here. But before we go and look for the class node, which would be Mage catalog model, we go and look for a rewrite node. And if the rewrite node is defined, then we try and match whatever's after the slash product with some node on the rewrite. And that's exactly what we have here. That's how this works. So first module, model product. And there you have it. Now, assuming your configuration cache is cleared, we will need to create this file. Now, the interesting thing is, you know, I shouldn't have to tell you where to create this file. And the reason I shouldn't have to is because the autoloader is going to be the autoloader that's been registered in the Bootstrap file. The only way it can find, or the only way it knows to find files based on class names is to take all those underscores and convert them to slashes and try and do a PHP include. And then when it does that PHP include, it's going to expect to find a class definition for that file. I'm sorry, for that class name. So that means to me that we're going to be in our module. So app code local, first module, and then we'll need a folder named model and a class named, a class file named product.php. Now, because we only want to do one minor little thing, and now that our class is the class regarding, as far as Magento is concerned, our class is now going to be the product model class. We're going to need to say class first module model product extends, let's see, extends Mage catalog model product. Lovely. And we can quickly check that it's working by going here. Yeah. See? See how easy that is? And now, if you see how this name here, all we have to do is redefine public function get name. And I can say name equals parent, get name, and then we can return, well, we'll just do string to upper. name. All right. Did I get that right? I think I did, yeah. Good. Again, not terribly practical, but it's all caps. And if actually, if you go into your catalog right now, if you've got sample data there, so if you have products and you look on the product pages, you'll see that they're all capitalized now. I've had stranger requests. I'm sure all of you have too. All right. Very good. So that is your first functional. That is your first functional rewrite. And let's see now. What's our next class? The catalog product view block. Were there any questions? Really? I don't know. That's great, guys. Very good. Very good. So everyone's got an uppercase product name. Yeah, I know. But you can see, I mean, there's a lot else you could do. I mean, at this point now, we can do anything to change the existing functionality of the class, or to or just to add. We can alter what's there. We can add to it. Both. It's great. Well, until some other module needs to do exactly the same thing, which is why, not why, but is one of the benefits of using observers, which we'll be looking at I believe, in the next lesson. So, moving right along, we'll just tear through a few more of these. So, and by the way, I hope everyone understands seeing that, because this is the important part right here. Global, models, catalog, class, rewrite. Again, if we were to dump the configuration object, the configuration DOM structure, we would actually see these two nodes, rewrite and class, right next to each other. It's additive. Some of the nodes are extended and some are merged. Extended nodes will end up like this, basically with siblings. It depends, though, unfortunately. The ones that are merged will certainly overwrite. The ones that are extended will be truly additive. And that's the problem. If some other module declares global models, catalog, rewrite, product, well, that one's merged. That one's going to overwrite. Well, and which one it is, who knows? It all depends on module load order, which of course is alphabetical unless you have dependencies set up. So we have first module here, but if some module comes along, second module or fourth module, anything after first, basically alphabetically after first underscore module, then that node would that config would overwrite this config. So again, that's part of the problem. So the solution to that, of course, is you can chain things, chain the inheritance, but it's that's one of the problems in Magento. Let's see. So our next thing. So inside of global here, now we have to do the catalog product view block. Well, let's look at what that looks like in our test script here. So if you recall, so that's actually that's the end of our functionality. I'm not going to deal with the functionality anymore. That's obviously why you would do this. So we're going to walk through and demonstrate that each of these is reworking, or is working. So object equals for a block, not mage. Yes, mage. We need to use the app. That's mage core model app, and from the app we'll get the layout. And from the layout, we'll get, from the layout, we will get what we'll call create block. And let's see, this is the catalog product view block. Catalog / product _ view. Okay. So if we do this, now we should see, yep, Mage catalog block product view. And again, the cool thing is, if we look at what we're passing in for our string here, so you would probably actually see this in the layout XML. You'd see a block tag, and then type would be catalog product view. But you would actually, if you trace that through the rendering system, you'll see that eventually what gets called is create block when you generate those blocks. So this is eventually where we end up. So this is generally a little bit of a lower level than what you're typically going to do, but it works for our example here. So for catalog product view, we need to change it for whatever reason. And here, pretty easy. All we have to do is look at catalog and then / product view. So it's a block. So that's under the blocks node under global. Catalog. Rewrite. And then product view. Oops. And I don't remember if I said that, of course, the white space matters here in terms of text values inside nodes. So I'd say it's important to remember to not make it pretty. I like to do this in HTML, but I can't do that here. So what are we going to call this? We're going to say first module block product view. Yep. Again, could be anything we want, but I like to do this just as a heads up. Actually, really, if I were doing both of these, I would have a first, first, again, is my namespace, so I have a company name first. Sounds pretentious, but first catalog would be my actual working preference, just as a heads up that I'm doing some rewriting. All right, so first module. So now I just need to. I hope by now you know. I mean, you know where this block, this class should go, right? Yeah. First module. I'll need a blocks folder, and a product folder with a view file in it. So block, product. And in here, no PHP file, view.php. And in here, I have to, and go ahead and save yourself some time. Just control-click that, and just say class, paste that in. Extends. Yep. All right. So that should be enough. Or not. Let's see. Oh, maybe I didn't save. Blocks, catalog, rewrite, product view. Yeah, okay. It's working for you? Okay, good. So we got it right, but the teacher didn't know what he was doing. No. Just remember to save. Remember your configuration cache. Always get that cleared out. And also make sure that just check your spelling. Most of the errors that I see here, it's either getting something wrong in terms of the position, like the hierarchy, or it's a spelling error. Oftentimes it's a spelling error. So that's the catalog product view block. All right, now catalog product resource model. Well, that's going to be under models as well. But remember, there's an extra step. So the catalog product resource model, if you remember the call for that, it's very similar to Mage get model. Let's see, I bet I can make this pretty. So it's very similar to what we have up here. But the two classes are doing very different things. Up top, we have an entity model that's going to have some data set on it, basically just a container for data and functionality for our entity. The storage, the access to the storage, that's the resource model. So that's what we're going to be doing here, and that method is just get resource model. That's the same thing, and that's a pretty neat little convention, really. I think I like it. I'll take it. I don't have a choice, so you might as well like it. So get resource model, though, remember, it just takes that extra step in the configuration because it has to find that resource model node. And what that looks like, we'll go back in. We'll check real fast. I think we've seen it before, but let's see. Because we have to know what to put in our what to put in for our rewrite. We have global blocks models catalog. We have a rewrite here, but if we tried to do, we're already rewriting catalog product. So the resource model for the product is just stored. The information is stored under a different node. So if we open up our configuration here, search for resource model. Oh, which, yes, one or the other. There's the three big nodes which are camel-cased. Code pool, resource model, and front name. Front names we'll be looking at tomorrow. So here is the node that we want to rewrite. And you can see catalog resource EAV MySQL 4. So in the configuration from get resource model, we look here. Well, first we match this, and then look for the resource model node. Get here, and then from here, we basically call get model class name, if I remember correctly. And get model class name will basically have us look under models again, back under this node for this right here. And then that, of course, gets resolved to this. And that's how that class is found. But as far as what we need to do, rewriting, we just would simply say catalog resource EAV MySQL 4. And so, yeah, just copy that. It's a terrible naming convention. Oops. And rewrite. And product. Oops. And just for the purpose of demonstration, I'll say I'll call this resource model. Just for the heck of it. I would be so disappointed if I heard any of you doing this. It's just not right in the Magento system. As you work with it more and more, and you have to deal with customizing entities, you'll see that it's such a big system. Just following the existing conventions, when there are conventions, it just makes things much easier for you and for everyone else. But that said, all I need to do now is I already have first module model folders. So I'll need to make a product resource folder. And again, you can name this anything, and what you name it affects where it is in the file system, but that's it. Where something is in the file system, it's not, its position in the hierarchy or whether or not it's under a MySQL 4 folder somewhere. It's all just arbitrary. It's just based on this configuration. So under model, now I need to make product resource. Product/resource. And then in there, I'll need a model folder. Yeah, it's terrible. Model.php. And then here, class, first module, model, product, resource, model. Extends, oh boy. Well, I'm going to go over here to this. Whoops. Oh, come on. That was a pity. I can rarely remember the full path. Yeah. So I'll copy this prefix here. That was from, again, from that Mage catalog. Oh, I'll do that. And product. Okay. Now, did I? Yep. So now we should be loading our, our class. Oh, that's easy. All right, now just two more. Has everyone got that? Oh, I mean, I know you're watching me type it, but remember that. Remember, I mean, if you have the need to do this, that's what you have to do. You have to look in the module that you're overriding, or whichever resource model you're overriding. You need to look into configuration and find that resource model node. I'm sure I spent a lot of time and therefore money in my early days trying to figure this stuff out. Let's see. So now we have helpers. Helpers, very easy. Again, but the one thing I'm going to remind you of is what you'll often see in the code for helpers is just a string without a slash. And that's just not such a common thing. In fact, it's really you'll only ever see it for helpers. So let's see what that looks like. In our test script, let me see, I'll comment this one out. And we'll just say object equals Mage. So again, this static method you can use anywhere. Mage helper, and pass in a name. So inside helper, I'll make a file name here, data. And so class, first module helper data, extends, Mage, sales, helper, data. No. So, I mean, it seems like it's starting to kind of sink in a little bit. At least the pattern is. Once more, I encourage you to go follow, kind of chase these factory methods through the config object. But hopefully, this really is starting to kind of sink in how that works. You can't know this well enough, I think, just because it's used everywhere. So we'll just check that we are correct. And yeah, looks like we are. Sweet. And then just one more. Let's see. Mage helper. And which one is this? So this is the customer address helper. So you're not limited to just data as a class, obviously. So you can just say customer address. All right, just so you guys know I'm not doing voodoo here, we'll see that we're loading the core file. Yeah, Mage customer helper address. So we're getting that from the Magento core, we're getting this class. And then all we have to do to change that is add something to the helpers node. I tend to like to put things in here alphabetically when at all possible. So catalog customer. So yeah, customer helper. Of course, we're customer address helper. Customer / address. Customer rewrite and address. First module helper address. So under my helper folder, I can just make, let's see. Under my helper folder, I just need to make an address file. And in here, I'm going to extend from Mage customer helper address. And done. Well, you guys did really well with that. Are there any kind of questions on the config XML? Just doing these rewrites. So yeah, I mean, you see the same pattern throughout this entire process of doing these rewrites. You can look at you can find out the information you need from the factory methods in all cases except for resource models. And then the resource model, you just have to do the extra step of finding that resource model node based on the class group of whatever it is you're working with. So in the case of catalog product, you have to go and look under the catalog node for that resource model node to find that. But from there on out, it's pretty straightforward. All right. Very good job, folks.